Welcome to another episode of Six Figure Secrets for Fractional Experts. My name is Bradley Jacobs. I'm your host, founder, and CEO of Mylance. Today, I'm joined by Ellie Holbert. Ellie, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Ellie is the founder and principal consultant of Impact Advisory Services. She does organizational effectiveness, independent consulting, partnering with people and culture leaders as part of mid-sized innovation and knowledge work companies. Ellie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bradley. It's great to be here.
So elaborate a little bit more on what does that all mean? What do you really do? What does that look like?
Yes, I would love to. So I'm Ellie Holbert. As Bradley said, I'm an independent consultant and coach as well who works with typically human resources leaders across industries to improve organizational health, leadership, as well as team effectiveness. So typically I will partner with an organization to diagnose root causes of misalignment in their business and then come up with targeted intervention strategies to improve performance and retention of top performers. I love to mention that I'm also a proud mom to a busy toddler who is the light of my life. And I am a novice gardener and a lifelong learner and an avid reader.
Amazing. How long have you been an independent consultant?
Sure. I've been an independent consultant since February of this year. So I'm about 4 months in, almost 5 actually. And it's been a roller coaster so far, but a really wonderful experience.
I guess let's talk about the transition. So what were you doing before? How did you know it was time to go out and do your own thing?
Yes, absolutely. Before I launched my business, I was doing organizational effectiveness work as a management consultant for about the last decade. So I was very much in this space, but I was working previously for about 6 years with a technology and consulting company that I really loved. Right before I launched my business, I was adjusting to new motherhood. I had my daughter a year ago in February. And while I was on maternity leave, I began dreaming up this business, thinking about how can I do the most high impact work, still be a provider for my family and maintain my financial independence. And a friend of mine actually told me about independent consulting. I had thought that I wanted to be an entrepreneur eventually, but I was not aware of independent consulting really, or fractional work either. And so I spent maternity leave dreaming up my business, thinking through my strategy, my next steps. And then I took the plunge just before my daughter's first birthday.
So you just kind of were like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to quit my job and just go for it.
Somewhat. So my plan originally was to land a secure multi-month public sector contract that would allow me to do two things. It would allow me as a business owner to build up cash reserves, but also have some time to build out the more strategic advisory work and leadership coaching that I love to do. And so that was the plan. It was a good plan at the time, but best laid plans, right? So I took the leap. I left my corporate job that I should mention I actually liked. And less than 2 weeks later, I actually had that contract unexpectedly canceled due to some changes in public sector work that were occurring at that time. So that was a very surprising, challenging time. My husband, he also was potentially going to be impacted by some of those changes as well. So you can imagine it was stressful for us as a family, potentially going from 2 good incomes to potentially none at all. So I hit the pavement. I was able to land a couple of opportunities after about 3 weeks. Thank goodness my husband's job seems to be okay. So we are really happy that I took the leap and took that leap of faith. But certainly as a business owner, expect the unexpected. Nothing ever goes as planned.
Yeah. Wow. So when you say hit the pavement, right? 3 weeks, you found 2 opportunities. What does that look like?
Yes. The first thing that I did when I launched my business was I reached out to my network. So I made a list of over 200 people that I wanted to reach out to one-on-one. I actually still have not made my way through that list, but I reached out to everybody that I thought, might be in my corner or we had worked together. They were able to see the quality of my work and vouch for me. And I reached out to everybody one-on-one. We had phone calls to catch up. I asked them about their pain points in their business, shared the work that I was hoping to do, and explored if they knew of any opportunities. And the primary contract that was really a saving grace was actually with 2 former colleagues of mine that now have their own consulting company. They were able to bring me on board to a multi-month project, and it's been a great fit. So I'm very grateful that that's worked out. But in addition to that outreach, I've done LinkedIn strategies. I've also refined who my ideal client profile is. And so business development for me has looked different every month, but that's what initially my efforts were focused on.
Yeah, amazing. So, at the beginning, nobody knows their niche. Nobody knows who their ideal client. Nobody knows even what services you offer. Let's talk about the services piece. How did you really figure out a scope that you could deliver on that made sense? Like, what did that look like?
I love this question because what I imagine delivering and what I am delivering and plan to deliver, it looks very different. And this is something that I think we really need to keep talking about as independent consultants. So initially, before I left my company, I pictured having a suite of service offerings all related to team effectiveness and leadership coaching that kind of built on one another. I pictured very complex team accelerator programs and series of rigorous assessments that I hope to do because I was looking at this from the perspective of what's the work that I love to do most. But I will say with enough business development efforts, I was able to realize it's not about the work that I want to do most. It's about what is the need in the market? What are the challenges that clients are actually experiencing? And so I've shifted from that suite of service offerings to really focusing on a couple of offerings. One is advisory retainers. The second is leadership coaching. I still offer assessments, training needs assessments, development programs, but in terms of what my focus is, that's actually where I'm leaning. But I would say the real lesson learned for me was meet each potential client, ask about their pain points, and focus on those pain points versus selling a predetermined suite of offerings.
And it just goes to, there's so many people I talk to that they want to figure out what their offer is. Right. And as you just said, you can spend all the time in the world figuring it out behind closed doors. But if you don't get out there and talk to customers and see what their pain points are, you're basically wasting your time. I mean, do you agree? What do you think?
I completely agree. And I wasted a lot of time getting my business ready. When I was in my corporate job, I was working full time. I was adjusting to being a new mom. I had a baby that was under a year old, and I was still working on building up my business. So I would wake up very early or work on the weekends while she napped and try to build out decks and frameworks and physical materials that I thought were the core of my business. I now understand the core of my business is clients and opportunities, and it all has to frame around those. It's not about what I anticipate bringing. It's about what clients need.
Right. And then I don't know if you thought about this. I know you're pretty early in your journey, but there's the concept of a productized service,
yes,
right? Where it's pretty standard across all clients and you say no to a lot of things. And then there's what we're talking about here of what does the client need and deliver on that. I mean, how do you think about making a more scalable offer versus delivering for the client?
I love that question. I would say I have an aspiration to build up to a productized business, but I do not want to create these products in a vacuum based on my singular lens and vantage point. I hope to create productized services that are based on real life examples and principles that I'm seeing that are working in real life. And so what I mean by that is I plan as I deliver for my clients to keep in mind repeatable processes, frameworks, and shape these over time informed by real world experiences with the goal of building up to productized offerings maybe within the first couple of years. But I honestly just don't feel ready for that yet. I really want to focus on my clients and their needs.
So the number one question is always business development, right?
Yes.
It's building a pipeline, keeping things sustainable. I know you've had a lot of success in this area. You were sharing with me previously. So first of all, tell us the success. Like what does your pipeline look like? What do the opportunities look like? Like give us the spiel right now.
I would love to share more, and I'll try to be as specific as I can because I know I've really appreciated that in episodes that I've listened to. In terms of the question around what my pipeline looks like, I'm very grateful to say it's actually looking very strong just about 4 or 5 months in. So in terms of initially what my goal was to earn about 1.8 times my corporate salary. And now just a few months in, my pipeline is actually at 4.4 times my corporate salary. And I should mention half of those opportunities do not have a monetary value assigned to them. So you could make the case that this pipeline is actually approaching 9 times my corporate salary, which significantly exceeded my expectations. I could not complete this work all by myself. If I wanted, I would have to hire more people, but it's looking very healthy. In terms of how this breaks down, I've had 11 deals officially close. I have 2 opportunities that are at the contract finalization stage. I'm preparing 1 proposal right now. I have 9 opportunities where we are actively in discussions, 15 qualified leads, and 30 additional leads that have been identified. So in total, that actually comes out to 67 opportunities in my pipeline, half of which, again, have no dollar figure assigned. So if I had to offer a value for that pipeline, I would say it's high 6 figures, but likely well into the 7 figures if all opportunities had a value assigned to it.
Yeah. Wow. So it's like 4 or 5 months in, you have over $1 million worth of deals in your pipeline. It's absolutely incredible. So congrats. Most people struggle so much with this.
Thank you so much. Well, I have to say, Bradley, I followed your method to a T, and it has been instrumental in building that pipeline. And that pipeline, I should mention, it's not like I have these superhuman levels of confidence when I'm getting on calls with potential clients. I'm a very normal person. I question myself. I have fears. I have anxieties, all of that. But I have really taken away a lot of insight from you around still making that persistent, imperfect action, and that is everything. So I don't wait until I'm fully ready to do something. I give myself until I'm 75% there, and then I have to take action. That's the rule for myself. And so that pipeline, there hasn't been a single phone call where I handled it perfectly. There hasn't been a single, proposal that's been perfect and needed no revisions. None of that has happened through perfection. It's just taking those consistent, imperfect actions that build up over time.
I love that. I think every single business owner, much less independent consultant, would benefit from just ship it. Just 75% of the way there as a rule, and just ship it. So
exactly.
You mentioned that you've been following our methods that we talk about here on the podcast and what we offer at Mylance. Share with the audience specifically, right? Like, I don't need you to reiterate what's on our website, but like, what specifically did you do? Have you been doing that's really generated this super successful pipeline?
Sure. So I would say that my business development efforts fall into 3 buckets. One being the direct outreach to my network that I've been doing, those one-on-one calls. Another bucket would be LinkedIn outreach. And then a third bucket would be finding places where my ideal client is gathering together. So in terms of the LinkedIn outreach, I follow your method. I've listened to almost all of your episodes and follow your advice to a T. So what does that look like? I post thought leadership to LinkedIn. And this can be articles or posts, but I really force myself to post several times a week. I aim for every day. If I only land half the time, that's still 3 to 4 posts a week, and that's great for the algorithm. I also tag thought leaders in my posts, and one particular post went, I would say, lightly viral when the giant of my industry of psychological safety, Dr. Amy Edmondson from Harvard, she engaged with that post, and that blew up and reached a large number of people I've never reached before. I also add my ideal client profile on LinkedIn almost every single day. So I send about 200 to 300 invitations a week. When people accept, I send them a message expressing my appreciation. I also engage with their content organically for a few weeks, commenting, adding thoughtful notes. And then after a while, when that might be reciprocated or there's some consistency in them liking my comments, I will reach out again and ask for a 15-minute phone call. I've tried 2 messages for this, one being just to get to know each other, and the other one being to ask them some questions for thought leadership that I'm writing. That has had quite a bit of success. There was, I think, a 4-week period alone where I was able to speak with a CEO of a life sciences company, a vice president of a life sciences company, and a vice president of a financial services firm. And a couple of those were actually very recognizable brands. So that was very effective. And then to go a little deeper into the third bucket of business development, I really recommend reaching out to professional associations where your ideal client is gathering. So for me personally, my ideal client, those include leaders in HR and the people and culture space. And so I'm a member of an organization called Troop HR. It's an incredible community of HR leaders, and I engage with that community every single day. They have a platform online, and I engage with that platform by posting on different forums. I offer insight and advice. I've done a webinar for them. I meet one-on-one with people that join and are brand new. And I would say this is an incredibly reliable source of one-on-one phone calls with my ICP. I think I have probably 4 calls a week just from this Troop HR community. So those 3 approaches have been incredibly effective. And I've been tracking my outreach to my ICP over time. I would love to share the progress if that would work.
Please,
Yes.
please.
Okay. Thank you. So I've been tracking the percentage of calls that are with my ICP. And when I started in February, about 8% of my calls were with that ideal client profile, the leaders in HR. March, it was actually 0%. So I somehow stepped backwards. But now, 4 months later, over 75% of my phone calls are with my ideal client profile. And I really believe that's because I'm following your guidance very closely. So I believe contact with the market is the only thing that counts. One-on-one calls with your ideal clients is everything. Everything else must be limited. That's really helped me build that pipeline.
Wow. It's so incredible. And I mean, you're obviously tracking the data. You're where every state, how many are in each stage. So you're tracking using a CRM, right? I mean, there's such value in measuring your efforts, and it takes some extra time, but it's worth it.
It does. It's so funny. It doesn't take as much time as you might think. I wanted to do this level of tracking, but was a little swamped with client delivery. And then one afternoon, I really forced myself to add this structure. I think it took me maybe 10 or 15 minutes to track that data. And that looked like scanning my calendar and just counting the number of calls I had and the number of calls that were with leaders that I needed to reach in the people and culture space. So I really recommend for folks to start tracking those numbers. Even if you set aside 20 minutes at the end of every month, that's all it really takes. And if you were to ask me subjectively, how are my business development efforts going? I think that as business owners, we struggle with confidence, with questioning ourselves. We're signing up for this. And if you were to ask me that, I might say, I'm concerned that this won't work, or I'm not really sure, I'm doing my best. But when I see the numbers and see that I've gone from 8%, 1 month, 0% to 76%, it forces me to realize, okay, things are going very well. This will work out just fine. So I really recommend tracking the numbers.
Yeah. Any kind of a way, and I've done many strategies of this to show myself tangibly either how well it's going, things I've accomplished, right? It's like, as you said, as a business owner, we get lots of feedback out there that doesn't feel so good, right? Lots of no's, rejections, advice, all that kind of stuff. And so having those internal ways to remind ourselves like, hey, I'm doing a pretty good job here, right? Like I'm doing just fine.
It's so important, especially when we think about hope and the hope for our businesses to succeed. It really helps me to realize, I speak to 30 to 40 people a month for my business. Of those 30 to 40, what percent will lead to closed opportunities? I'm still not sure yet. I'm still tracking those numbers. But when I look at the volume, I know that over time, I will close more opportunities. So on those tough days where you're thinking, I just don't know when the next opportunity will close, I just don't know when the next check will come, look at the volume of your calls. And if it's that higher volume, it's inevitable. You will land more opportunities.
Yeah, amazing. The context that you're adding, as far as you said, new connections every single week, every month. Where are you getting that list from of contacts to add?
That's a great question. So I'm currently using LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
Okay.
I'm newer to the tool, so I'm not sure that I'm leveraging it to the extent that I could. But what I begin with is the recommended connections or the recommended leads. I always go to that list. I've been able to refine the algorithm over time to remember that I'm interested in C-suite and vice presidents in the people and culture functions at larger, mid-size companies in innovation, cultures, and knowledge work. So that could be life sciences, it could be consulting, professional services, technology, And over time, the algorithm seems to learn that that's who I'm wanting to reach out to. And those are the recommended leads that it offers.
Yeah. Amazing. So, and then as far as the content, you said you aim to post every day, sometimes get 3 to 4 times a week. I know we have our own philosophy on this, but how are you coming up with what you want to post about that builds that thought leadership and gets you, that awareness and trust with those new contacts?
I love that question. If I were to sit down and try to come up with thought leadership every morning, it would be so challenging. I have tried that several times. What I've realized works really well for me is I wait for moments of inspiration or moments when I've had a really exciting conversation with somebody or I feel a lot of energy around a topic. And I will open an AI app. I like Otter AI. And I will just do a brain dump on my own and just verbally get out all of the thoughts that are swirling in my head, all of the ideas, all of my beliefs and assertions and recommendations based on that conversation. And then I feed that transcript into ChatGPT. I've trained a model to review my transcripts and basically make incoherence coherent, to look for the themes within that. And then I will create a prompt around generating thought leadership. Typically, once I see the themes, then I'm able to say, okay, I want to make a post that makes this statement. And so I will review a few options with that in mind, and then I'll take the best option. I'll edit it heavily. I want it to sound like me and feel like me. And then I do one more round of refinement before I post it. So that's the process that I follow. Typically with one really good brain dump, I can get a week of content from that. And I like to do different content pillars. So I will focus for a time on leadership coaching. I will focus for a time on team effectiveness and selling the CEO on investing in team effectiveness strategies, because that's often a pain point for leaders in HR. And I find that sticking to those content buckets can be very helpful to organize my thoughts, but still cover all of the areas of interest that my clients have.
Yeah, amazing. As far as tools that you've used, are you using a CRM? You mentioned ChatGPT and Otter. Any other tools you're using?
Yes. Tooling is something I'm thinking a lot about because, my goodness, the subscriptions really add up over time. But right now I'm using ChatGPT. I'm doing, I think, the $20 a month level, not the $200, although I've heard the $200 one is exceptional. So maybe that's a potential investment. And within ChatGPT, I'm working on training agentic advisors specifically to do a few different things. I'm working on a business coach advisor where this ChatGPT would basically offer solutions and insights and coaching to me around the business in terms of mindset work and taking bold, consistent action. I'm working on a CEO GPT, which is all about helping me to think strategically and be that thought partner, because when you're on your own, it can get a little lonely. I'm also working on a GPT that is specific to the delivery of my work. So I have my own framework. I have my own assessment tool. I've pulled in academic research, industry best practices into a bulk of knowledge work related to the work that I do. And so I'm training a GPT on my work. And then finally, I'm also using a GPT as a VA admin assistant, still working on that one. So I have 4 different GPTs supporting me in my business. That's the tool that I'm using for that is ChatGPT. I also, in terms of the CRM, I am using One Page CRM. I think it's maybe 30, 35 a month, if I'm not mistaken. It's been very helpful. It's been created specifically for solopreneurs in mind. So it's very intuitive. I really like the tool. That's also where I track my pipeline. And I have a pipeline for client opportunities. I have a pipeline for potential partnerships and collaborations. I also have a pipeline for speaking opportunities. And then finally, other tools that I'm using, Riverside for podcasts. I am using Otter AI for transcription. And then I'm also using Score app to build out assessments so that my ideal clients can take assessments to assess the health and effectiveness of their teams, their employee engagement efforts, and then receive a diagnostic. And I, in return, receive their email address.
Cool. And you're going to be using Mylance shortly for content.
Yes, I cannot wait. I am so excited to be one of your first users. That tool will be amazing because, like I said, with thought leadership, if you're going to sit down and start writing, it's extremely challenging. And the tool that you're developing, I can't wait to see the way that it provides value in this area, especially around those different content pillars.
Yeah, amazing. I want to dive a little bit into the emotional side of things. So you mentioned it twice around you have the normal fears and anxieties that everyone else does. And that manifests in many different ways. And one of the biggest ways is the non-needle moving activities, right? As you said, the only thing that really matters is talking to clients, one-on-one conversations. But people spend all this time with logos and websites and business plans and everything behind the scenes when none of that moves the needle. And of course, this shows up in other ways too. But how have you navigated the normal fear and insecurity and anxiety that comes with going out on your own for the first time and doing it anyway? Because you're doing it bigger and faster than most people, than 99% of people, I'd say. So how are you doing it?
Wow, thank you. That's a great question. One thing that you said that stuck out to me was how easy it is to become distracted with working internally, almost invisibly, in the quest to start a business. And I think that is something that independent consultants really need to keep an eye on, because, reaching out to potential collaboration partners, working on documents privately, those things feel very productive.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of an illusion because, like we said, to fill the pipeline, you need potential clients, potential opportunities. Even the collaboration partners, although it can feel really productive to get on a call and learn what someone does and share what you do, those don't lead to opportunities very often, at least in my experience. Yeah. And it can be a bit of an illusion that you're making progress, getting your name out there, but it's not client facing. So I really like that you mentioned those examples, because that is a common pitfall. But I'd like to answer more thoughtfully your question around emotional regulation and resilience. I do think that that's been a major differentiator in the progress that I've been able to make in just a few months, because I'm willing to experience and manage the discomfort that comes with being a business owner, whether that's rejection, disappointment, anxiety around outreach. And a lot of this is because I practice mindfulness strategies. And one of them that works really well for me is allowing myself to experience the physical sensations of emotions without suppressing them or brushing them under the rug. And I have a belief that these emotions are like visitors or old friends. They're welcome to come at any time, but they won't stay forever. And so I will take a moment to bring my awareness to the parts of my body that are uncomfortable. For example, with anxiety, I have a tightness in my chest, a tightness in my throat. I'll take a moment and just place my hand on my chest, my hand on my throat, and I breathe deeply. And I remind myself I can survive these sensations. These emotions are just sensations. I will survive this. And because I don't let things bottle up and I don't brush them under the rug, they just wash right over me. It's like a storm, moving through your neighborhood. The sky looks dark and stormy, but then it moves on through and it's sunny again. That's how it feels for me. And I remind myself, these emotions, it's not an actual sign that I'm not ready to take action. They're just signals that I need to take care of my nervous system. These brains are not designed to help us be entrepreneurs. They're designed to keep us alive, and they work so hard to keep us alive. So I will say to my brain, thank you. You are working so hard to keep me alive, and I love you for that. But we're going to be fine. We need to go run a business now.
Yeah. Wow. Where did you learn that?
In a few places, but mostly from my dad. My dad is really into mindfulness and meditation. He grew up in an environment where he wasn't really allowed to have emotions. It was not safe. And he has worked so hard through his life to change so much in just one generation. And a big part of that is around creating safety in our home, creating safety within his emotions, within himself. And I've learned a lot through him. We also, as a family, went to a meditation seminar when I was about, 12 or 13. And that was an awakening for me. We were introduced to the concept of metacognition, which is thinking about what you're thinking about. And I remember kind of walking through my adolescence with this awareness of, oh, wow, I can think about what I think about. And these thoughts are not actually me. I'm separate from them. And I can sort through them and consider them. But I have this internal locus of control that can choose what I do regardless of what is coming up in terms of thoughts and emotions. So long way of answering that. I would say some early formative experiences, my own spiritual beliefs, and just really practicing every day or as best as I can mindfulness and meditation.
Wow, it's beautiful. And it's also interesting. A lot of our work sometimes is to work through what our parents conditioned us to believe or think, or just how we are, our conditioning. And so it's really beautiful to hear someone share like such a powerful experience that they learned from their father.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I got so lucky with my parents. I have to say, I got so lucky with them. And I'm trying to, continue to weave that thread with my daughter. She's 16 months old now, but in the morning, so she's very young, but we like to do a little bit of yoga together. She can do downward dog. And in the morning, I ask her if she wants to meditate with me, and she'll breathe really deeply. And so, of course, it's a little early, but I so wish for her to also just learn to be at peace with herself, be at peace with her emotions. A large part of this too is that if we are not regulating our emotions, they will demand our attention anyways, and they will find a way to do that. And so, although I think sometimes there's a misconception that these concepts are kind of fluffy or touchy-feely, which there's nothing wrong with that, I actually see this as a distinct competitive advantage, because the time that I could be spending fighting with myself, being dysregulated in my nervous system, being distracted because I have emotions that are not being dealt with, all of that time and energy is freed up for other things. So it alleviates a lot of cognitive load if I just take a moment, go through my mindfulness strategies, regulate myself. So I would encourage you, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, that's a little squishy, I don't know if that's really my thing, this might actually be the competitive advantage you've been looking for.
And I'm going to take it a step further, Ellie, because yes, you're not spending time, fighting your emotions and all that kind of stuff. But I'm a believer that our subconscious, if we're pushing down the emotion, if we're not processing in a really healthy way, like you're describing, it's going to hold us back in so many ways that we don't even realize. Yes. From, right, not doing the thing that our business truly needs from us.
Yes.
And so it's not only a competitive advantage, I think, in the way that you're describing, I think it's a requirement to be a successful business owner and actually feel good and aligned and powerful and grounded as we build our business to be practicing in whatever way. I love what you described, but whatever method works for you as an individual, so that you are processing and making space for everything that does come up. Because I think just like romantic relationships, running a business is one of the best way to see like what all your triggers are and all your stuff is, right? It brings up so much. And if we don't process it and handle it well, yeah, it's gonna come out in not in a pretty way.
Wow. It's so fascinating what you're describing. I haven't even really thought about it in those terms. And yes, I completely agree. I've even had, memories from childhood come up around, social awkwardness, trying to fit in, finding my way among my classmates. I've had really specific memories come up as I built my business. And some of that, the echo of my childhood has gotten louder suddenly. And I think it's because of what you're describing around how deep this work is. And I mean, truly, if you were to tell me that emotional regulation and mindfulness was the main thing I would lean on as a business owner versus technical knowledge, I would have never believed you. I don't know, maybe because I'm interested in this, but I really didn't think that was what was going to happen for me. But truly, like you said, our subconscious, I mean, if we do not believe that we will achieve a certain outcome, or we're not capable of it, or we don't deserve that outcome, that comes through in all of our work. I've seen emails on days where I remembered, it was a really tough day. I found out about an opportunity loss or personally a tough day. I've remembered those days, and I've seen messages that I've sent, and I can see a distinct difference in terms of the confidence, the warmth, the boldness with which I recommend the next step versus days where I feel very aligned and feel very much like myself. So you're right. It comes through in everything that we do.
I know for me, and there's a lot of successful people they're very analytical, and we think a lot, right? We're kind of like analyzers in a lot of senses of the word. And so what I've learned is that the overthinking that I developed, and I'm going to own the overthinking, is a response to not wanting to feel the feelings, right? Feel the feelings of not enough or anxiety or grief or sadness or frustration, whatever it is. And so I intellectualize the feelings versus letting myself feel. And it's actually been a practice for myself, whether it's in business or whether it's in anywhere else in my life, of when that feeling comes, don't try and figure out where it's coming from or what caused it or what does it mean. It's like, just as you said, take a second, put my hand, I do the same thing. I put my hand over my chest or wherever I'm feeling it. And I just like, okay, you have permission to feel.
Wow, I love that. It's so funny. I see parallels too in what you're describing with launching my business, but also becoming a mom. And becoming a mom was what it took for me to launch my business. And I think a huge part of that was motherhood forced me to learn how to surrender. Before motherhood, before pregnancy even, I did not know how to surrender. I would fight my way through challenges. I thought if I just put in the right input, I will get the right output. I could, even if I wasn't the smartest in the room, I felt like I could work harder than anybody in the room, and that's how I would get the results. And with pregnancy and motherhood, the paradigm shifted so completely where I could not control outcomes. I could not control what this infant would do, if this infant would sleep, by doing the right inputs. And I finally learned to just surrender and to be completely unattached to particular outcomes and just enjoy the moment for what it was and find the gift that I could find in that day, regardless of the circumstances that were happening around me. And I don't want to make motherhood sound too challenging. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced in my life, but it's not easy. And on those hard days, I am just so grateful for the gift of surrender. And I've really brought that into my journey as a business owner. You might not think surrendering is the way to grow your business, but I think what I'm describing is that non-attachment to the outcome. I will do something brave and bold and reach out to a leader or really put myself out there. And I know that no matter the outcome, I'm going to be fine. And I just surrender to the possibility of whatever may happen. And I'm so grateful for the peace and bravery that motherhood has given me, because that gift of surrender, I don't think I would have discovered it any other way. And I could not run my business without it.
The letting go of the outcome or being unattached is the perfect word. It ends up being a paradox in my experience to, I'm going to give it my all. Right? It doesn't mean I'm not going to try hard or care, or people are like, how do I care if I'm unattached? Right? Or what does that mean? And it to me, it is a paradox. Like, I'm going to give it everything I got to build a successful business, find new clients, do proper marketing. I'm still going to work hard, and I'm going to care, and I'm going to be unattached. I'm going to surrender. I'm going to let it play out how it's meant to play out, knowing I gave it my all. And if it doesn't play out how I want it to, great. Then it's feedback for me. I iterate, I learn, I grow, I figure it out for next time. Yes. Right? It's all a journey, which is a bit of a cliche, but I don't know. I'm curious if you thought about that paradox of giving it my all and being unattached.
Yes. So when you were saying that, an image came to my mind. I remember when I was a child, I loved playing with water. We lived on the lake, and I would often scoop up water in my hands. And I was amazed at how if I tried to hold the water really tight, it would just run through my fingers. But if I just scooped the water and gently held it, it would stay in my palm. And that image always kind of stuck with me. And I think it's a way to visualize what you're describing right now, which is when you cling to the outcome, when you try to force it, you don't necessarily get the result that you're looking for. But when you just gently hold possibility for the outcome, ironically, you might get it. That's been my experience, at least.
Yeah. And so how do you do that in practice? Because it's like, we really want these things. I really want that client. I really want the money coming in. Maybe I need the money coming in to put food on the table, support my family. You mentioned supporting your family. Like, there's things that we really want. So how do we hold the possibility loosely, like that cup of water, versus squeezing it, which is, of course, the thing that makes us lose it?
I would say get aligned with your core objectives. So instead of hustling and overworking and trying to burn the candle at both ends, really think about who is it I'm trying to reach? What value am I trying to offer them? And align all of your efforts to that. If anything is outside of that scope, it should fall off the list. And that frees up your capacity to focus on the most high impact, high value activities. And then within that, one thing that I really love to do is to remind myself of the value of my work. So I will write out quantitative improvements that I bring to clients. I had one particular engagement where we delivered $4.5 million of added value across 18 months, no additional investments. And the reason I bring that up is that when I get on calls, instead of really working myself up with angst and insecurity, I remind myself I could bring this person $3 million a year in value. I have something valuable to offer them. And with that, I can feel myself physically unclench and find a greater degree of ease. So I remind myself of the value of this work. And then the third component I would say is making sure that you are aligning your outreach and your calendar to support the growth of your business. So identifying what is the number of calls that you feel you need to have on your calendar. For me, every week, I try to get 6 to 8 booked. About 25% to 50 get canceled. So I end up with the right number that I can handle for my capacity. So there are specific practices I follow to grow my business. And I know that if I see the calendar, I see I have the calls booked, I know my value, I know I'm reaching the right people with the right message, that is where I can kind of loosen my grip a bit and just trust that opportunity will come and kind of hold the water in my palm. I can sit back, just be myself, follow through on my commitments for the week because I know I've created the architecture for this business to thrive. I can't squeeze it all out in one day.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is really focusing on the process, right? It's like, I'm going to do the activities. I'm going to post on LinkedIn. I'm going to do my outreach. I'm going to follow up. I'm going to comment on their stuff. I'm going to engage with them. I'm going to offer them, right? What you talked about, a 15-minute, adding to a thought leadership post, right? I'm going to do the things I know over time in aggregate are successful. Not necessarily this one or this one or this one, but like in aggregate.
Yes.
And then trust. I'm really going to, like, that's the surrender piece, is like, I'm going to trust that my activities, right, and kind of the universe is rigged in my favor kind of experience, right, of like, this is going to work out, not in every micro moment, but in the macro experience.
Yes, exactly. And it will work out. It might not look like what you thought it would look like, but that doesn't mean it won't happen, right? You have to leave a little bit of that room for magic, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I do trust that it will work out. I do trust that over time, if I make these commitments, I make these decisions to structure my day in this way, to take bold action, to imperfectly commit, I believe it will work out. And so I am able to surrender with that trust.
Yeah. Amazing. Your perfect business in 6 months. So like end of the year, we're exactly at 6 months, right? Into the year. By December 31st, 2025, what does your perfect business look like?
So funny you say that. I wrote it out yesterday.
Oh, nice.
So my perfect business, I like to do reflection quarterly and monthly. I like to do a look back and then planning ahead. So yesterday was my quarterly review and my monthly review. So that's why I wrote this out. So by the end of the year, I hope to find 2 clients that are ready to commit to a retainer, strategic advisory retainer for an ongoing period. I also hope to find 4 additional coaching clients as well. I'm really excited to be doing a collaboration with an incredible coach who has a PhD in leadership transformation. She's running a coaching program that's about 7 months long. And so I'll be joining her on that as an additional coach. So that will be a lot of my bandwidth and a really interesting opportunity for the rest of the year. And so in addition to that and my existing client work, that's what I'm hoping to build is 4 additional coaching clients and 2 advisory retainers. But in terms of, looking at it from the bigger picture, I would say just to feel the sense of meaning is wonderful. And I hope to just continue feeling that. When I became a mom, I made a commitment that any time away from my daughter needed to be fulfilling, financially fulfilling, emotionally fulfilling. If I was going to be away from her, it had to really add to the life of my family, not take away from it. And I am so grateful that that's already become a reality. And I hope to just continue feeling really fulfilled and engaged and continue earning to provide for my family.
Before we wrap up, I did not ask how much time per week do you spend on these business development activities?
That's a great question. I would say that it ranges. I think I spend between 8 to 15 hours a week on business development. So it is a lot. I would say this is probably not sustainable long term if you have a very high volume of client work. But for me personally, I believe that this is a necessary commitment to build a very robust pipeline, which is my goal. So in the future, I do think I could probably land around the 8-hour mark and be okay with that. Or at some point, I do hope to make investments to free up capacity, and that could be a virtual assistant. I really hope to work with Mylance in terms of thought leadership and LinkedIn growth. So I do believe making those initial investments would be very important to free up capacity for the work that only I can do in my business. But right now, it's a lot, but it's doable.
Awesome. Did you get our last episode on virtual assistants? I don't know.
Yes, I did. It was so good. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and we have a great company that we've used to find them, and I've been working over years to find that really effective balance of how to work with them, and I've at least gotten to a good place now. So
that's incredible,
amazing. If our audience wants to find you, where can they find you? What's the easiest way?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Ellie Holbert. I would love to hear from you. I'm just amazed by the community that's formed around independent consulting. So please do reach out and say hello. That would make my day. You can find me there.
Awesome. And we'll link your LinkedIn as well so people can easily find you. Ellie, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. I could talk to you forever.
I could talk to you forever too.
Yeah. Thanks for being here and sharing just everything with the audience today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bradley. And thank you so much for all you do. You're changing more than you could know. So please keep at it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie.